So, hello, everyone. Let's just see. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. This meeting is being recorded by the Ways and Means Committee. If any other person present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. In accordance with MGL Chapter 30A, Section 20G, no person shall address a meeting of a public body without permission of the chair, and all persons shall, at the request of the chair, be silent. No person shall disrupt the proceedings of a meeting of a body politic if, after clear warning from the chair, a person continues to disrupt the proceedings. The chair may order the person to withdraw from the meeting, and if the person does not withdraw, the chair may authorize a constable or other officer to remove the person from the meeting. So we'll do the roll call. Councillor DeSorga, I'm present. Councillor Bottomley? Here. Councillor Forgy? Here. Councillor Golub?
Here.
Councillor Toronzo? Councillor Toronzo informed me that he would not be able to attend tonight. Public comment. Does any member from the public wish to say something? This is the time for public comment.
If approval of minutes too.
Yes, that is, oops, I skipped that. So go ahead. We're going to, pardon me for taking that out of order. Does anyone have objections? Because I started that if I go back to the minutes. Do you have objection? Okay. Do you have an objection? Objection? I'll go right back to that. I see someone's hand up. You may proceed. Stephanie. I believe that's you with your hand up. Just unmute and you can go right ahead and speak. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
So I'm actually calling in because of the opioid stabilization fund.
Okay.
I did have a question more than a comment because I think you guys have gotten a lot of what I've already written on that. I'm wondering if that money, once the stabilization fund is established, will it go in immediately, or is this going into effect in the future? Not, I don't want the opportunity of $199,000 to be rolling into free cash. So I think it's really important, and I'm very glad that the council has taken up the proposal of going along with the amendment to the Mass General Law. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I do have some other things I can, speak to, but I'm going to hold off on that for a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I will, we will take that. I'll be asking that question. I'm saying it out loud now so that when we get to this, we can take this up with our financial director. There was a question on we don't generally have back and forth. We have public comment, but I'm just saying it so that our financial director, and welcome, we'll be talking about whether, and we're not going to answer that right now, but we're going to be talking about whether or not that money will go directly, all of it directly into the opioid task force, opioid stabilization fund, if we decide to create it. So it just holds that question for a little bit. And then we're going to go on to what I so cleverly skipped over. The approval of the minutes for April 12th, April 18th, and April 24th of 2023. I don't know if everybody had time to review the minutes. Was there any objection to any part of any of the minutes?
I do have one thing that I would like struck from the April 12th.
Okay.
It's at the bottom of the page. And the line says the city contributed 61.4% of the operating budget towards the school.
Okay.
And I believe it's really questionable how that statistic was arrived at, and that it doesn't conform with how DLS reports. So I don't know, seeing it printed like that looks like fact. So we've gotten that information the night of the meeting in a presentation, and the school committee and the superintendent were not allowed to respond on that. So I would just soon have that stricken from the minutes.
Go ahead, Councilor Forgy.
I, the minutes reflect what was said. And is there any way that we could amend that language so that it would say it was stated by, or it was
Well,
it was proposed, it was stated, it was put forward that blah, 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 operating budget towards the school.
I didn't agree with it at the
I
time
believe we
either.
questioned it, but we only received it in the meeting, and I don't see a reflection of us questioning that. Because it's a silly number. And by seeing it, by putting it in print like that, for people who come to look at that again, it looks like fact. And I'm very concerned about that. And especially since there's nothing in here that says we were questioning that when we were given that statistic in a live presentation with no advance notice.
I think it's important that we say something to make that clear.
Well, I think it is my own thought to say that I didn't agree with it. What I saw on the DLS website was 34.5%. I hated absolutely being presented with numbers that I had never seen that night. And I think it reflects worse for us as a body to be saying that we all didn't agree with that, but I think it would be better scratching it out because I didn't see it as factual.
How does this work? We
can eliminate, I have been, when I was in planning board, which was very interesting, everyone in planning board, we never got through a set of meetings with them being accepted as is.
See,
Never. We had a couple of people, and I actually, on disability access, I have someone who thoroughly reads all of the minutes also, but in planning board, we never got through a meeting without somebody saying that actually wasn't that. And so somebody would ask for something to be deleted from that. To add addendums to that now, that is not what Tammy or whoever was the person was taking out of that. I think you'd get into more trouble, but we could, because it was a presentation. And we allowed the presentation to proceed, and some of us said that we didn't know where that number came from, and I remember it not agreeing with it.
I do have a question. Could we say the operating budget of the school was discussed?
Yes,
That'd be factual.
So that the questionable statistic isn't there?
yes, then it would say the contribution of the city for the operating budget of the school was discussed.
Yeah,
okay,
that makes me feel a little bit better.
okay.
The event of discussing is in the minutes.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. The operating, I want to get that down, the operating budget
The
of the school was discussed.
I think it goes better if we do it the other way. I think it would be the city contributed toward the operating budget of the school.
Okay, the city contributed towards,
Contributes toward.
the city contributes towards the operating, all right, I'm doing this again. Well, we have to all agree on the amendment. So let's see first before I start writing. The city contributes to the operating budget of the school. Is that, in general, how do people feel about that?
Works for me.
It was part of the presentation. You could always say the city contributes towards the operating budget of the school.
Or the percentage the city was discussed, the percentage the city contributes.
To the school was discussed. Yes.
What do you like? What is everyone liking?
The percentage the city contributes to the school budget was discussed, was presented.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm going to write that down.
Okay.
The percentage that the city contributes to the school,
Operating budget,
to the school,
operating budget.
to the operating budget.
Yeah.
The school operating budget?
Yep.
The school
Okay.
operating. I'm gonna have to go to the next page.
Budget.
Operating budget was
Or
discussed,
presented either way, if you, this is like a
Was.
presentation.
was presented, it was presented. I forget. what we
Well,
had to
so
say.
if you look at the notes, they did have the heading of the operating was presented.
Was
So I guess you could just put the city, wait, I don't even know if you need to say was presented.
discussed or presented, everyone, before I discussed, okay. Discussed. Okay, so that's a motion to make that friendly amendment. Do I hear a second on that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Is there anything else on these budget, on this set of minutes that needs correction or that someone has objection to?
I didn't see any.
New kiosk by, under economic development, new kiosk by City Hall and Court Square, annual software subscription. As I remember it, it was for 2 years,
Oh,
It was when?
for 2 years. Correct?
yeah.
The new kiosk by City Hall and the Court Square software subscription. It wasn't annual, it was for 2 years. For 2 years. Anything else? Okay. Anything else on any other set of minutes here? All right, with that, I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll move, yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So next. Onward. This. So we're going to have a motion to the creation of the opioid settlement stabilization fund. Could somebody read that for me, or do you want me to read? Could somebody do that?
Order number fiscal year 24006. City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Wade Gardner, in order to create opioid settlement stabilization fund. Move that it be ordered that the city create a special purpose opioid settlement stabilization fund pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, 53B, local option paragraph, with receipts from the Massachusetts State Subdivision for statewide opioid settlement funds to be deposited and then appropriated annually to be used to supplement and strengthen resources available to communities and families for substance use disorder prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery. Disbursement of said funds would be made at the request of the mayor by a vote of the city council. 2/3 vote required. Should I read the explanation?
You do not have to. I'll second that. So discussion on this. I'd just like to start with the one question that was asked on this before we begin. I believe it was, and thank you, Director Schindler, for two things. First, I wanted to comment that I love the look of the financial orders now.
Yeah.
I just, you know what, I would just like to say this from someone who's read financial orders for many years. It's appealing to the eye and I just wanted to compliment you on that. It reads well, and I looked at it, seems softer in a way. But as I'm looking at it, I really liked that. No, it was, I liked that, and I thought, let's call attention to nice things when we see them. I thought that was very nice. I just had a question because this was asked by a constituent, and I do see the supporting information and had read through the DLS things at one point. That's all the money that we have received thus far, $199,000 that will go in, and we're not anticipating any, it will go in right now. I know that we keep getting it annually, so we anticipate that entire amount will be going in.
So as I think I explained, I don't know if it was in my memo or, so because the city, and I sent this in the city and town information from DLS or DOR, because DOR never created any kind of legislative avenue for special revenue fund so that we could have set that money aside. We are in the position now, the other option would have been is we would have had, in order to access that money in FY23, the current fiscal year, we would have had to go back and recertify our free cash as in March, which communities can do. So in other words, you can certify your free cash at the beginning of the year, but in March, if you have additional proceeds, you can go back and recertify it and use that free cash. That was what DLS was recommending for folks to do, and we didn't feel that that was prudent for us to do that for a variety of reasons. You end up really having this year's free, you're using your current year's free cash, basically. We didn't want to do that. So the money now has to close out to the general fund because there is no avenue to set it aside. It is set aside indirectly in our receipts, but we can't just spend that without having it go to free cash, and now it needs to be appropriated into the stabilization fund. So that's what I'd said as part of my memo. We have to create the stabilization fund. We are working very diligently on getting our free cash certified as quickly as possible, but we anticipate it'll probably be October because we can collect receipts up through September, and we need to do that for all of our grant proceeds. So as soon as we can after October 1st, we will certify our free cash, and then we will ask you to do an appropriation of that 199 into the stabilization account from free cash. So that will all go in. In the meantime, we anticipate in FY24, we're going to be getting about $35,000. That's our next anticipated payment. It's supposed to be any day now. When that money comes in 24, as long as that stabilization fund is set up, then we can just put the money right into the stabilization fund. So from then on, the money will just go, all of the proceeds will be directly allocated to stabilization. And then you have the vote to, vote it out of stabilization with just a majority vote, but only on the intended purposes, which is recovery, all the things that are listed.
I was in favor of that. I was hoping that we'd create this stabilization fund. I liked the way it works. There's 9 votes to get it out. And it appeared to me that you put in almost all of the uses that I could think of. And I did read that state a few months ago, I read that they were hoping to have something else out by July 1, but like the rest of us, they probably got busy.
Or it didn't pass.
It didn't pass.
But I did include in there the actual language that's in the Remediation Act, which is substance abuse disorder prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery. Just because even in our opioid remediation meetings we've been having, task force meetings now, to try to determine the use of the funds. There's been discussion about public education. There's been discussion about other ideas for utilizing the money, but those are not eligible, in the act or in the, the mass, when we received, Massachusetts received that money for the specific use purposes. So I just wanted to be clear.
So have you had a few meetings on that already?
There have been two, yes.
And who's present?
There are a variety of social service agencies, and then from the council, Marion Bullock has attended both. And then myself and the mayor, from the city, Anna from CDBG or from CDBG person.
Anybody else?
From the public, not from the general public, just again from those social service agencies. But the intent is that there will be some more global public participation process that these agencies are now, trying to determine what the best, what that best avenue would be.
That's great.
Their desires to get, public participation from people who have lived experience.
So this may not have an answer at this point, because you're beginning the process and everything else. But is this committee envisioning, I want to separate, is this committee envisioning a task force, or is this committee going to be solely for the distribution of funds to social service agencies?
So I think it is too early. I don't want to speak for the mayor because I think she's still sort of doing some information gathering. I think what I can say directly that the intention is that even though this seems like, it doesn't seem like that much money.
That's not a lot.
It's not a lot of money,
And
it's only going to, we are going to get it over, I think, 15 years, but collectively, it's still less than $1 million. So over that period of time, you're talking like little, like I said, our next allotment is $35,000. So I think the desire is to make sure that there's some immediacy to that, and that we're trying to fill some gaps that exist right now. And I think what we're discovering is there's a plenitude of social service agencies, but there are some specific needs that everybody is kind of looking for. So I think that's what we're trying to do. It isn't going to give the money to any particular social service agency. That's not being contemplated at this time. It's really to utilize those agencies to get this money out to the people, the people that have direct needs, I guess. That's what I'm saying. But it's still in the very preliminary process.
Got it. And I wonder, since you're still in the very beginning of all of this, is there any kind of representative from the Veterans Association? Is our veterans agent sitting on that? This, if not, I think it would be a real good person to add, because our veterans do have very serious opioid problems. So it would be very good if that could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great person to think. I think the mayor has really, there's been probably 20 to 40 people, from different agencies. So I think there is, quite a bit of coverage, but whether we've gotten every single person, that sort of means a person. Like today, I know there was somebody from, the CSO crisis team, and then the new person here today, but yeah.
And was our own Board of Health and our own public safety, like the fire department, the police department, and the sheriff's office, were they
Yes,
there?
they're all invited, yes.
They're all
Today, yes. Jen
Oh, we didn't hear
Hoffman
that,
is attending, and the police department, the CSO, the crisis, folks that are working with the crisis team have been here.
So police, fire, and Board of Health have been there, okay? Okay.
Jen's been busy.
Oh, no, I think she has been, Yeah. So, that's great.
So I have a couple of follow-ups.
Yes.
One, I just I appreciate that the language is fairly clear in here. Well, I appreciate you putting this language in here and that it sounds like the real intent of these funds are for repair and reparations to the families and individuals who've been affected. So just want to state that for the record, like, that feels like it's worth repeating many times that is the intent. And I appreciate you including that language here. And I just want to repeat back what I think I hear you saying, is that as soon as our free cash is certified, which will be very soon, within the month probably, you will be bringing forward another order to appropriate these $199,000 to this fund. And then all the funds after that will go immediately into the fund. Okay, great. And what is the stated purpose of this group of people who's gathering? Like, is the stated purpose to give input about how the funds are allocated? Or it sounds like it's separate from the opioid task force. Like, what is their?
So the opioid task force is a part of this group, but basically I think the mayor wanted to convene. There'd been kind of a lot of preliminary discussion about the funding and how it could be, spent or where, I think, I think different agencies were saying, let's get together and let's take, Greenfield's money and these monies. And so before any of that, I think the mayor just wanted to have a group, a broad representation of, everybody from FERCog to, CSO, there was the wildflower people, recovery project. So any opioid task force, all the public, like anything public safety, public health, like everybody to come together who's been working on these types of issues with repair, recovery, harm prevention, and determine, get some ideas going that aren't necessarily just the opioid task force, aren't just the recovery project, aren't just this. They all have their own, kind of parameters that they're operating in and things that they're working on. And I think she just wanted this sort of broad understanding of where the gaps are in kind of like all of that.
Okay.
And I think that's what she is getting very readily, and I think it's going to be fantastic because, like I was saying, those agencies have sometimes pipelines to resources already, limited as they might be. But we just want to make sure that holistically this is really going directly back to, the population that people is intended to serve and not to agencies.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the stated purpose of these convenings is to advise about the allocation of the funds.
Okay, exactly, and what the missing pieces are for the people in that lived experience.
And have people with actual of course therapists and et cetera have lived experience with their clients. Have people who have healed from addiction or who've lost loved ones to addiction been present at these meetings?
So many of these agencies are actually run by people that have exact lived experience, and many of them, and yes, many people that are in this group have that as well and have been invited from those different agencies as well. So I think, but to your question, I do think there is a desire from the group to still make sure that they're connecting with as many people as they can, at that. So that's kind of what the last two meetings have talked about. But again, we want to be really cognizant of not spending money to survey, to find out information that we readily know.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, great, thank you.
Is there further discussion on that? Okay. That being said, all in favor of creating this as proposed?
Hi.
Aye. Okay, thank you. So, I have, before we go on to the next thing, how's the free cash looking?
Well, it's looking, we do have an estimate, but we do have a lot of grant receipts that we are trying to get in. It's, I'm working with Amy, some of it's ED related, some housing rehab funds and things like that. So we are, I'm working closely with Amy to make sure that, all those grant proceeds are received. So, but I think it's, we anticipate it'll be what our average is.
Okay, good. Yes.
Not last year, because I wasn't in.
No, I know, but our average is very, very good, so that's great.
Yes, we still do anticipate that.
That's good. I just couldn't let that go by. I was wondering. All right. So next up is a discussion. Let's see.
Order?
Yes, would you care to read that?
Yeah, it's on
Discussion.
page 30 and I can read it.
Mm-hmm.
Order number fiscal year 24007. The City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Weidegartner, in order for interfund transfer of $7,650, move that it be ordered that the sum of $7,650 be transferred from executive administration salaries full-time to accounting salaries full-time to adjust compensation of finance director for fiscal year 24. Current balance in account is $77,492.46. Majority vote required.
Second that.
I just, everybody's got in front of them some paperwork. I emailed Diana today to ask how the breakdown is. She sent it right back to us.
Mm-hmm.
We have it. I have no problem with the figures at all, none whatsoever. So I would be a positive vote on this.
I would like to say thank you for stepping in to do two jobs, actually, and I wondered how you were doing. I actually, I thought, good for you for stepping up to the plate and doing two things at once, because I thought that your job actually was more than enough to begin with. So thank you, and you doing okay?
I feel that a lot of the things that I'm working on are financially, have financial implications.
Okay.
So it's somewhat of, I think it's just helpful for me to be involved sometimes in the outset of these things to mitigate any financial
Yes.
things.
Yes. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Director.
So I feel like it's
I should-
it's working in
Yes.
a dual purpose, yes.
Yeah. I'm in favor of this as well, and I do have a question. Are we paying the current, the chief of staff who's on leave? Is that salary being paid, or we're not paying that?
No, she's resigned.
Oh, so she's officially, because it said something sort of nebulous in my recollection when the person was leaving. It was like a short-term resignation or something, but one doesn't do that.
She was saying she was taking like a sabbatical, but she just means in her life, not.
Oh, so because actually that was what we got received, and I had that as my question. So that was a resignation?
Correct, yeah.
Oh, okay.
She's been gone since like the second week of July.
No, I knew what the date was, but it said when the sabbatical was confusing to me, but so is there, are we having any further comments or discussion upon this?
No, just echo what Councilor DeSorger said.
Thank you.
Yes, a huge thank you. All right, so I think this was under discussion, so, but I'm going to say, why don't we take a vote on that, because we've all discussed about it in case we don't know what's going to happen next month. So are all of us in favor of this as proposed?
Aye.
Aye, okay, very good. So it doesn't say anything here else before I say the next meeting, but I actually have a question which is financial. Before we go on to say when the next meeting is, I have a question about the GMTA, because this was financial in nature.
Yes.
And we can certainly discuss this further tomorrow night. And we can do it on the council floor if anybody feels that that shouldn't be here, but I was reading this in the paper 2 years ago. The city council voted, not to allow the sale of that. And my first question is, has it happened? Because I read through the registry of deeds and I can't find it. Has 382 Deerfield Street sold?
It is in the process of being sold. So I'm unaware of the council vote that you're.
2 years ago, we said no.
Oh, 2 years ago. Right, what we did was we were asked
To sell it.
to sell it, and it was not in our purview.
That's correct.
So basically, the answer was, no, it's not ours, take it back and do the homework. Right,
That's
it
correct.
does not belong to us, it belongs to the
GMT.
GMTA, it's the last vestige of GMTA stuff. Also, the state has to, in addition, GMTA. So Greenfield and Montague both own this property. Proportionately, Greenfield would get the lion's share.
70%.
And then Montague would get the smaller share. But there also has to be some involvement with the state on this as well, if I'm not mistaken.
The
Department of
dissolution.
Transportation, the dissolution of the authority itself has to happen. It's not just, I'm putting it up for a quick claim deed and it's sold, there's many parts to it.
But there is a closing that's this week.
So,
I want to be transparent.
Sure, that's fine, but did it go out to bid?
That was my
That was-
question.
It's
Because someone must
so
own it, because
low.
there's a real estate agent involved.
Real
and so
estate-
I'm confused that,
Greenfield and Montague both own it. They own the physical facility. They
Okay.
were renting it out to the FRTA for the buses.
okay,
FRTA got a new building, moved all the buses, that freed up this property for sale. But it has to, if we're selling, this would be my question, is if we are selling municipal property, I think it has to go out to bid because it's municipal property. And again, there has to be this piece where all the folks involved with it have to sign off. I saw in the paper, Montague signed off, okay?
Right.
But did it go out to bid before Montague signed off? That would be my question.
So,
can I just say one thing? I sent you just this minute while we were talking, the notes on this by Councilor Forgy. And I'm going to read this, Councilor Forgy, this was 2 years ago when we took this up. I just sent this to you, Director Schindler. I assumed that you would have gotten it, but it said, based on the very last page, this was from Doherty, Wallace, and Pillsbury. Based upon the foregoing, in my opinion, the GMTA has the power to dispose of the real estate. I would suggest, however, that since the express powers to dispose of real estate is not set forth in the transportation area statute, you should consider obtaining the vote of the city council for Greenfield and the select board in Montague, either approving a proposal sale or approving generally the sale of real estate, which is generally, number one, what we do. And number two, I know that the select board approved it, and I know that 2 years ago that didn't happen. And additionally, I am delighted that someone would be using that. I'm concerned also about the procurement. And so those questions all may come to you tomorrow. This is like a large heads up. Because you know how I am. I rewatched the meeting just to make sure. And I thought the answer was, after your thorough study, we didn't authorize it. I would have thought it would have come back to us and to have one person looking at it, and also the fact that it's assessed for 880,000.
Yeah.
And we're going to be selling it for 400,000. And that was the person also who, as I recall, was, graciously $65,000 under on the TIF. I have a little bit of concern about the,
Yeah.
We'll look at that, so we can talk about it tomorrow, but I did want to give you a heads up that that will be.
I'd have to go back and watch, but I do have a question for either of you that were at that meeting. I remember something about declaring it surplus
Yes.
before selling it, so that was my
Um,
question, would it ever come back? Because we said we didn't own it, so it wasn't ours, but would we at some point, when they authorized to sell it, would it come back to the city to own it or declare it?
Sale of all property, doesn't the sale of all property usually come to?
Well, this is a little bit tricky, and I'm prefacing my remarks on the fact that when the goal, the backstory to this, the goal was to get a transit center. And the transit center would, according to the feds, John Oliver at the time, the senator who was chair of transportation, and our state reps, Dan Rosenberg and stuff, there couldn't be two transportation authorities. So they had to be combined or whatever, massaged. So then when the mayor came forward and said, basically, I'm taking this to you, I want you to declare it surplus property, and then I want you to authorize me to sell it, it didn't belong to the mayor, and it does not belong to the mayor, and it does not belong to, that was not our purview, because it does not belong to the city. In jointure, it belongs to two cities. So basically, it's their boards that, in my opinion, are responsible for the physical plant. The board, the GMTA board and the FRTA board together are responsible for this whole. It's very difficult. It was set up like in 1929 or something like this. And they had trolley cars.
Right.
That was the purpose of this, was to provide transportation between Greenfield and Montague. And it was a separate entity. It was not, did not belong to either Greenfield or Montague. It was made separate by the state. Then along comes the FRTA, and they come along a little later, I don't know, in the 70s maybe, and they set up their Franklin County operation, which includes all of Franklin County, except it does not absorb the GMTA and the FRTA. Understanding all the time, there's money coming from the state for these different groups, and there's different boards that serve, and there is one right now for GMTA, and there's one for Franklin, Montague, there's a board. So now the question is, what I wrote in that memo, according to the research, it was not ours. So it really did not belong in front of the council. That was the interpretation. Now, there was a legal opinion that Councilor DeSorbo just read, and that was from a previous attempt to move this thing forward, where it basically made a recommendation that of what Councilor DeSorbo just read. But for my purposes, it was not council business, and it should not have been before the council ever.
Okay.
Okay, that was my point, because we didn't own it. It was not owned by the city. It was owned by the entity, the transportation entity, made up of representatives from Greenfield and Montague.
And trustees.
And now that transportation entity has moved, has that transportation entity not moved?
No, the FRTA hasn't, the FRTA.
It's moved,
Sorry,
yes, it has moved its buses, it's moved, and it is property that is in this city.
You know, and so it has moved to FRTA has moved over to its new bus.
Right.
There it is, right there. However, the owners of it still are the board.
Right.
And I'm going to say that I think you sit on that board.
Yes.
Yes. And I know that there's a Montague board as well. Now, the interesting thing was, I think I read in the paper that the Montague
Board of Selectmen.
Selectmen
Right.
approved this sale. Okay. However, the equivalent of the executive branch in Montague is the Board of Selectmen. So the mayor is the executive branch in Greenfield.
Well, that's a very good point.
Yeah, that.
That is the
That's a very good
executive,
point.
it's the executive pieces. So, but, I mean, the Board of Montague approved it. I'm assuming the mayor approved it. I'm not well
Well,
versed on that.
I heard them talking about it in TIF meeting 3 or 4 months ago, and I thought my really biggest concern is the price and it not going out to bid.
Well, that would be the question in my mind, yes.
This was my question. Is that board bound by any rules to sell it, or do they just make up whatever they want to
Well,
sell it?
well, that's an interesting question. There's no more Greenfield Montague. That was
Right.
dissolved. That was dissolved and all the business aspects of it went to the FRTA. So all of that, with the exception of the property, the physical property, everything else went over to FRTA. And so now it's this one piece of property. However, because they have their state, what do I want to say? The state created them. The state has to dissolve them at this point. And the question is the physical property. And so the question to me is, in my mind, would be the GMTA board. And I would hope that they would ask the FRTA counterparts, they need to decide what the disposition of the property is going to be. In other words, they need to say, in my opinion, again, this is just my opinion, they need to say, we're putting it up for sale,
Yes.
okay?
Wait, when you,
Going up for sale.
when you say they need to say it, I think I lost you. The board needs to say that or the state needs to say that?
The board needs to say that. We're defunct, we're demobilizing. And basically, or we have demobilized, and this is our last chunk. And again, this piece, we need to say, we are putting this out, we're putting this up for sale. Now, I think the question turns to, they've made a decision about the disposition of the property. They don't want it anymore. They're putting it up for sale. The question becomes, what process do they have to follow in order to sell the
Yeah.
property?
Yeah, I would say, who's selling it? I'm assuming it's that, you were talking about the state has to dissolve the entity. You would think they would create the process for dissolving it, but to sell the land. Like, if the state doesn't have a process, I'm just confused about where we're going with it.
So according to this was created so long ago, and I spent a lot of time reading this, created so long ago, like horse and buggy time, okay?
Trolleys.
Yes, and so, but we clearly, in 2007, got a legal opinion based upon, in my opinion.
Wait a minute. That opinion that you're reading, could you go back to the beginning of that opinion?
Yes.
And tell me what the date is on that?
2007.
2007, but 2 years ago, that was part of the evidence that I put together in that packet, okay? That I was trying to make the point that this was not our purview. And it wasn't the mayor's purview either, because it was the entity that was doing this. Now, the 2007 opinion is just that, it's an opinion that says it would be, this is the way I interpreted that opinion, it was a good faith effort. In a good faith effort, it might be, reading the last paragraph again, a good faith effort might be to do this, and this. But for the purposes of that particular issue, that was done to show that this has nothing to do with us, it had nothing to do with the mayor. It had to do with the entity. And so the entity's job is to say, my opinion, we're breaking apart. And all the other pieces of GMTA were sold or went over to FRTA. Buses, employees, all of that, basically, that all went over to FRTA. The only thing that was left was the bus terminal or whatever, the building, because there was no place to house the buses. So the deal was made that GMTA would, they didn't like it either, I have to tell you, but GMTA went over to FRTA. They combined as much as they could. There was a lot of turnover and everything else. And the building stayed in the possession of the GMTA board until the buses can be housed someplace else, which is now a reality. They're over in Montague and they're housed. So then the entity has to come back and say, we put this up for sale.
So let me see if I'm hearing part of this correctly. You're saying that according to how you're following this, that before the building is sold, GMTA needs to say, we're breaking apart and this is the process that we're selling this by. Am I hearing you right?
Yes, in reality, they have, in my opinion, they've already said they're broken apart, and the state recognizes that.
Okay.
Because the state was instrumental in making one entity, which is the Franklin, whatever.
Yeah.
Franklin Regional. And they put money, time, and negotiators and everything else back when I was in office into that whole process. So the only thing left at the end of that process was the property. Okay. So it's understood that GMTA is the only reason it exists is because it's officially the owner of that property, of that physical property.
So then they've already said we're breaking apart, they've established the FRTA. And so now the step to release this property is to say this is the process by which we're selling it. And we don't, and has that happened? That is the question.
The former mayor is the realtor, okay?
Yes.
The former mayor is the realtor, and there was one buyer, but I don't know if it went out to bid, and I think it's, as the checks and balances part of the government, I felt like it's my obligation to say something.
Well, I'm not criticizing or anything like that. I'm just saying that at this point, the GMTA met and declared it surplus. Now, I wonder what is the correct process for selling the property?
So I wanna, so we've arrived, like, that's the
We've
nut.
gone around, and
Yeah.
now we're
I think we all agree on that.
Yeah, we all agree that we need that clarity. So, and I want to ask you, Director Schindler, for information about this, or maybe this is for tomorrow. But before I do that, I want to say, therefore, if that has not happened and this property is being sold,
Yeah.
Right,
Doesn't
right.
pass the smell.
Smell
That's what I say.
What you're saying?
Yeah.
it's great, like,
Yeah. I'm also curious that, because when we took that vote at the time, maybe I didn't read as in depth, but I took that to mean it's not in our purview at that moment because we didn't own it.
It was not in our
But at some point,
purview.
it could be surplus. What if if Montague declared their surplus?
Well, you realize they're a town, we're a city,
Right.
there's two sets of rules. It was never in our purview. It wasn't ever in the mayor's purview to bring it forward either,
So,
okay?
and is there any state oversight, or is this seemingly odd set of coincidences?
How about the armory? I mean, just as an example, there was like an auction, other people looked. I mean, that was one of those rather different things, but I know the different people could have gone to bid on it.
Well, the state gave us that.
Still, I'm just saying, I'm trying to think of it, a little something, can anybody else do anything similar?
So couldn't GMTA have done that?
There is no well, I don't.
When they were, we don't know, we don't even know how they
There is a board,
dissolved,
but-
right? We haven't received anything.
Greenfield and Montague have agreed to give it to the city of Greenfield. I don't think Montague would be willing to do that. Because it's their property too, so why should they give their property to Greenfield?
And so, and why would they agree to a sale that's half the assessed value of the property.
Well, I don't know any of those questions. I don't.
I mean, yeah, I want to, yeah, it's very confusing.
I don't.
So I mean, I guess, so a couple of things. First of all, I don't think this is on our agenda. Is that correct?
It's,
Right.
it is not on there.
We can talk about it tomorrow. We'll bring it up
So
tomorrow.
I think I might be able to give you some of this information, but I do feel a little uncomfortable about having this
Okay.
extensive amount of dialogue.
You're absolutely right. There's
Yeah.
a number of
No,
challenges.
Well, I said at the beginning that this would be something to give you a heads up for tomorrow, because I think the mayor will probably be asked a lot of questions on this. I certainly plan to, and now you'll know exactly what they are.
That's very
And so we can leave it at that,
So I do
okay?
think I have some of this information.
Okay, so we can leave that. I think we'll leave that for that, and I'll go on to the next, which is, hold on. Our next meeting is going to be September 19th of 2023, at 6 PM, City Hall Meeting Room, second floor, and via Zoom hybrid, unless otherwise posted. And on that happy note, I'd take a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty.